Okay.
Got it.
Welcome, everyone, to our DSU online workshop today, planning and facilitating effective online discussions. It's good to see you all, and we expect a few more people to arrive as well. I'm Dr. Terry Brandenburg with DSU Online. I work with faculty development and online teaching certification, and I'm pleased to welcome our two facilitators for today's workshop, Dr. Deb Chittur, who is a learning designer with DSU Online, and Dr. Jason Wild, who is an assistant professor of family studies and human development, and is also currently the department chair. I'm looking forward to learning more about improving discussions in online courses. And so we'll go ahead and, without further ado, turn the time over to Dr. Deb and Dr. Jason to lead our discussion about discussions today.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Terry. I have to tell you all that Zoom had an update today, and the way you share your screen is completely different from the way you've been sharing your screen. And so I want you to cut me some slack as I clunk around on this new way, but it doesn't give you all those choices of which portion of your screen. It just says portion of screen, and then you have to, it gives you the window and you have to resize it over whatever you want to share. So tell me that you can see this poll. Actually, I know you can see it because you're all participating. So everybody knows what the post and to reply model of discussion forums is. I don't have to explain it. All right. Well, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. In our division, we really feel that it's important that discussion forums go well. I am, you think everybody's here, Terry? Can I go ahead and end the poll?
Yeah, I think, well, I imagine we'll get a few stragglers, but I think you could end the poll.
Okay, so you can all see what you said. Share results. All right, a majority of people here love it. And I want to hear more about that because I marked it turns my stomach. So I'm really glad that you love it and it's successful in your courses, and we want to hear more about what's working for you with those types of questions. So I'll switch through. Terry's already introduced us. And in this session, we're going to answer some questions. Jason and I did not want this to be a presentation in the sense that we're lecturing to you at all. We really wanted it to be a discussion where you share what's working for you and what your concerns might be, and we can all help each other do better discussion forums in Canvas. So the questions we're going to be asking are, why would you use discussion forums in online courses? When does it make sense for our students to learn from their peers? And what kinds of discussion forum activities work best? And how we should manage discussion forums effectively. So let's start with the why. Discussion forums help create community. A community of learners who is on task is a glorious thing to watch, whether it's in our face-to-face classroom or online. The learners are exposing themselves in these forums to different ways of viewing a problem that come from peers. Peers are innately interesting, so this helps with engagement also. And they know how to capture each other's attention. A lot of times, if they're in the 18 to 22-year-old demographic, they speak a little bit different language than a lot of us do. And we can learn so much. I know that you all know this from our students and kind of what's going on in the world, because we are a little bit in an ivory tower here. And so we need this window onto their world also to be effective teachers, I believe. So everyone who's contributing in the forum, including you, is making their thinking visible. That's an important skill that students need to learn anyway. They're making their thinking visible, and they're in a written way, and they're learning, their writing is getting better and better. Some people like to use video in discussion forums too, and that calls on a different skill and helps them develop a different skill. So they're learning how to make their thinking visible, and they're also learning how to make that understandable to other people, because they'll get constant feedback about whether what they're saying is making sense. And of course, this is all the case in a face-to-face classroom too, as far as oral presentation skills and discussing what's going on in your head. Direct instruction is great for presenting and explaining principles. I'm in the social learning camp, but there certainly is an important place for lecture, I believe. But complex topics are typically messy to learn. You can't just, you can't just take in the information from one person and, seed it in your head. It's a much messier process, and the learner stops and starts and revisits and comes at problems from different angles. And those other voices in the room or in the online discussion forum are so helpful for that, especially when a student is not understanding something. Canvas is what we got. Canvas has designed discussion forums to help students learn socially in an asynchronous way. It's far from perfect. We complain about it all the time in our unit, and all the different ways that we would change it if we could. But it's what we've got, so that we're going to be sort of using that as our platform and framework today when talking about discussions, using that discussion forum tool mainly. Now in 2019, we held a panel. And when I say we, I mean our office and CTL held a panel together. And we asked students to come and talk about what was working for them and not working for them in our online courses. And I was there. There are other people here who were there. And fortunately, Terry kept notes, so I didn't have to watch the whole thing again. And I pulled from the notes kind of what students had to say. They said that discussion boards were one of their top 3 challenges in online courses. And on this slide, I put a summary of what their complaints were and their suggestions. I'm not going to read them to you. You can yourself. The last one, if people don't know what a jigsaw activity is, there are different ways of doing something like a jigsaw. You can break students into small groups that work on the same discussion prompts. Canvas allows you to set up small group discussions. And then you can bring back the discussion to a larger group. Or sort of the classic jigsaw is to have a group of students responsible for doing a piece of an assignment. So you might have 5 groups looking at 5 different things, and then and presenting them, and then coming together and analyzing them and synthesizing them as a larger group. And I'm actually going to show you some examples of that later on. So I wanted to start out here, hearing from you what has worked for you in the discussion forums. And I hope I'm going to actually pick on somebody. I think Judy put yes, that she likes the post and 2 replies. Am I right, Judy?
Yes, you're right.
Okay. Would you mind talking about why you like them?
Well, my online course is an RN to BSN, which, if you don't know what that is, nurses can sit for the NCLEX exam and become registered nurses with either an associate or a bachelor's degree. And so we have a program that is for nurses that are working and want to finish their degree. Therefore, they work, as you might or might not know, nurses work all different hours, all different days. Their days change every day. So consequently, discussion forums that are asynchronous work really well for the class I teach on leadership. We expect them to have 150 word response to a prompt or a question or whatever, and then respond at least 75 words back to 2 of their classmates. Their first response has to have a current peer-reviewed reference to it. What works really well though is I respond to every single person individually.
Wow.
Because that is the way I don't respond in the discussion, because I don't want mine to make people change what they might be thinking. I'd rather they think about it, because these are working nurses that are in the middle of it. And so I want to hear what they're thinking. And so I respond individually in that, on the discussion where you can do a comment on the side when you're grading and all that stuff. I respond individually to every single student that puts in a discussion, which is very time consuming for me, but I feel like it gives them some really good feedback. And the students in my evals have said that they appreciate that feedback and that issue and how that works. So they talk to each other, and then I respond individually to each of them. Sometimes if it's been a good discussion, I'll put an announcement up saying, hey, that was a great discussion. You brought out these points, blah, blah, blah. But it works well because my students are asynchronous and have lives that are everywhere. If I tried to match them up, then some would be very frustrated working with others because they're on, one might be night shift, one might be day shift, one might be 8 to 5, one might be 2 to 5, whatever. So that's why it works so well for us, is because of the lifestyle that our students are in.
Right. And the online courses work really well for them too. I don't know how they do a traditional RN to BSN. Yeah,
they would have to
program.
Yeah, they'd have to make sure they had the certain day off every day, and it just doesn't work really well. And so this is the best way for nurses who want to get their bachelor's degree to get that. And so we do it quite well, and I think it works well because they listen to each other. They have real life experience, because we often say, in your place of work, tell me how, tell me about a conflict and how it was resolved and how you might have done it differently. And so they have to talk about their individual areas, and we'll have somebody that's worked NICU, someone that's done home health, somebody that's done the ER. And so you get all these different flavors coming in because of that.
That's cool. And I've seen your forums and I know they're awesome. Somebody else?
We've got some comments and questions in the chat too, Deb.
Oh, I did have the chat open and then it went away. Let me open it again.
Yeah. Drew is saying she had a student share with her today a good experience with discussion boards. I don't know if Drew, you want to share that, and then we'll go to Dave and Jason's comments.
Sure, and it actually goes back to Judy. So it was an RN to BSN student, and she had just accolades for the RN to BSN program and how good the classes were and how much she's learned from other nurses through the discussion boards. And she said it's actually, after 25 years, helped her make future career decisions moving forward, just from the interactions with her peers and her professors. Now, she did not have the same thing to say about her gen eds that she was taking, but the RN to BSN and the discussion boards were extremely productive.
Yeah, we work very hard to make them work that way. I see there's a question from David. Was that to me or to everybody else?
I think to everyone as well. But Judy, I think before you answer David's question, I think your question prompts also made the discussion worthwhile. You said, in your experience, in your workplace, what conflicts have you experienced and how have you worked to resolve those? Everyone brings in their different experiences, and that's, rather than asking a question about, I'm looking for this specific answer from a textbook, where everyone puts the similar responses, you've made that question prompt something that that brings a variety of responses that people can be interested in.
Well, and one way we bring in the textbook is, say, from your reading, tell me about a conflict and how it was not, and from your reading, what might have happened. Did that help you figure out how you could have done it differently? So we try to bring that in, but I don't want them to regurgitate to me the book. I've read it. I don't need to have them read it to me again.
Right. David says, do any of you participate in the discussion boards along with your students?
Yeah, and I responded in the chat that I do to a certain extent, and usually I wait until the majority of the students have made initial posts, just so that, like Judy had the concern about her participation might sway people in some way or might steer the discussion in some way. And I have that same concern, but I still feel like responding from time to time so that it feels a little more like a classroom where students make questions or responses and then the instructor adds something in.
David, I was actually going to talk about this at the end when I talk about how to manage discussion boards, but I'll tell you what I do is I teach a gen ed course, level course, not here, but elsewhere. And when students are not discussing very much, I'm going to be more present in the board, trying to ask questions. I've even gone to the point of calling a couple students and asking them, I'm going to put this here. Could you share this experience you told me about? So I do end up micromanaging a little bit on when the discussion is failing. But I really feel like a good discussion probably doesn't require much from me. So that's what I do. So the answer for me is it depends.
We have strong rubrics to grade all of our discussions, which really helps because the students know where they're failing, where they need to do it better and stuff. So.
And you use the same rubric for every course in the program, right, Judy? So they really get the hang of it. They don't have to go look that up every time. All right, I'm going to switch to, I know there's some of you that may still have thoughts, so feel free to add those in when we're talking about this, but I want to know what your struggles are, your challenges in discussion forums. I'm going to guess there may be some or you wouldn't be here today. None?
Well, I would say that my challenges are just that I've done like Judy does, and I've commented on people's discussion posts in the speed grader, where you see the discussion and you can leave comments. I haven't participated very often in the actual board, but my challenge is I find, it's time consuming. So sometimes I don't do it. And then the discussion tends to go, the discussion quality tends to go down. So yeah, it's just time and participation that way is challenging.
So it's more managing that you're not quite sure always how much you want to interrupt.
Yeah, just so sometimes I've done discussions on a topic where I haven't participated at all. They get graded on the discussion, like they have to post a 100-word original post, and then they have to post like at least a 50-word replies to someone else, and sometimes they're required to comment on someone else's reply. And in the rubric, it says your post and your replies have to contribute substantially to the discussion, either by providing some additional example or something from your own experience. And that's part of the rubric. So just to grade the discussions takes time, and then to actually provide your own remarks, it takes time. So yeah, I would say just the management of it is a challenge.
Yeah.
Debbie, as a chair, I find my challenge is not in my own course because I have my own standard. It's when the other faculty don't reach the same standard. That's, as a chair, I have a hard time making sure that everybody responds to their students and whatever. So that's for me that's another leadership management issue. You know, in other courses or in courses that are like mine that I'm the lead instructor in, but there's other people that teach the course, is making sure that they're doing the same kind of responding and not just good idea or way to go.
Where do you think that challenge for them comes from? Why?
Well, often it's part-timers and we pay them crap, so they don't want to have, they're not as much invested in it as we are, and so they just do what they have to do to get the money. So I think
I think that's one thing. And the other thing is that I run into a lot of faculty who don't believe in them, who don't like them. We have students who don't like them. And I think that, I mean, that's one of the reasons we're having this discussion today. But I think we have not, I don't know whose responsibility it is, but I don't think we've quite convinced people of the importance of social learning. And then there is the faculty member like Jason, who I'm going to talk about in a second, who totally understands social learning, but is skeptical about whether it can be pulled off online. He pulled it off beautifully, but that's part of the story of Jason and I in this course that we're going to look at.
I'll chip in something here about what's not worked well for me in the discussion forums. And so before I came to DSU, I taught in an online master's program for family life educators. And there, you know, it was all online. We did have one meeting per week that was synchronous. Everybody had to meet in a chat. It was just a chat room, essentially. But I had a very difficult time getting significant depth in the discussions. And sometimes when the requirement was to post X amount of words or to X number of students to respond to X number of fellow students, I could see that many students were doing filler type work just to get to that requirement, because that was the reward. You know, it was dependent on X number of words and responding to this number of students. And so I had to do a lot of coaching to try and get them to see how to respond in a deeper way. And that was difficult work. So I tend to go away from word count requirements and publish a rubric that talks about substantive posting. And then I just have to keep coaching, because I still, even though I don't require a certain number of words or a certain number of posts, still I get a lot of online responses on the discussion forums that lack depth. And so it takes me a while to coach students to show them how to get more depth.
I just have one comment as well. I really appreciated your comment, Jason, about that. In my teaching, I've noticed similar things, that if I'm focused on putting in a discussion thread or a forum or whatever, because I want to either to fulfill requirements, as you mentioned, or even if my primary purpose is to build a social community, it doesn't work as well. But if I focus on asking the right questions that really would help the learners to grapple with the topic, or to see something in something that they're doing or whatever, then number one, the social happens anyway, and number two, those requirements are completely unnecessary. You know, that they and I haven't. This isn't all my experience, right? I've certainly had ones that didn't work as well. I'm just saying those ones that did work better, there was an emphasis more on what is the right question rather than the requirements.
Okay, I'm going to move on, but we can definitely come back to these topics and we will. All right, so when does it make sense to use a discussion forum in your course? Well, at the beginning of the presentation, the poll asked you how you felt about the post and to reply format that's used in many online courses. And there are great uses for this kind of format. When students bring in, like they do in Judy's courses, different experiences and examples, and then they can sort of process the similarities and differences among their posts, that can work really well. It's not a great format when all the initial posts are factual answers to the same question. And I've seen so many of those here and elsewhere, where the answer is always the same for every student. And then what do they do when they reply? They don't know, because their instruction is to post that initial post and then reply. And the rubric might say something like, make sure the reply is thoughtful. So if you feel you really have to use the discussion forum like that for some reason, I recommend that Canvas has a way that you can set it up so that students can have to post before they can see other student responses. And that actually is kind of interesting. In my doctoral program, we did that a couple of times, and it was very interesting to see what the other students' factual responses were, because sometimes they were really different and always thought-provoking. So I think that's the only time I would use the post and to reply format for that. Otherwise, just use an assignment, a Canvas assignment, and only you need to read it. The best discussion forums that I've seen ask students to go out and find different examples of applied principles to share. For example, Casey Shakespeare in his population health course asked his students to go find examples of fraudulent advertising. And he had taught them previously, or he had given them content that explained the different types of fraud. And so the initial post was that the students posted the advertisement. So that was cool. They got to see all of these. And then the reply posts were all students choosing some and discussing what kind of fraud it was, and processing and arguing. And, that was very cool. Controversial topics spur a lot of debate. My field is history, and it's pretty easy to get some heated discussions going on in my field. And those seem to work well. Everybody jumps in and argues with each other. So you want to look for difficult problems in your field that you may not even have a solution to. Maybe there isn't any accepted wisdom on a particular problem. And those kinds of topics make great discussion forums, and they give the students a window into the workings of your field, which is very exciting for those of them that are considering a major in the field. Introduction forums make a lot of sense. Students can share things about themselves. I've found that you really don't even have to require replies for those, because they're just so innately interesting. The students are innately interested in each other a lot of times. Any forum that asks students to share experiences from their respective cultures creates ripe opportunity for analysis. And I think it's really important here. especially in our community, which we get kind of a similar demographic among a lot of the students, and then there are some outliers. We need those outliers to come in and share their points of view too. And we need that typical demographic to be aware that those folks are in our community and they are part of our community. You do want to be careful that you're monitoring the forum in that case, because you want to catch any accidental or occasionally purposeful disrespect about a student's cultural practices. And I ran into that actually a lot when I taught the Civil War in at Independence University, because it's a nationwide university. And there were so many, I had a lot of, for example, white Southern students who had no idea that the Confederate flag was an issue for some of the Black students. And they discovered that in the discussion forum, and they went back and forth. And I mean, I would say 100% they found a consensus and unity on the topic once they understood each other's points of view. Or at least if they didn't, they sort of dropped out of the discussion. But within the forum itself, I saw so much, so much. So I think this is like something else has gotten in the way of this. So share with me how discussions in your courses have enhanced learning, ways that you've seen students have improve their understanding of your subject through the forums.
I don't mind saying something. Over the summer with the
Thanks,
course,
Sean.
with the Course Design Institute, I realized that for quite a long time, I mean, I have the discussion, you know, the initial response and 2 replies, but a lot of my discussion threads were fact-based. They're based on the reading, you know, read the chapter and tell us what you think about it. And so a lot of the responses were the same. So with my composition classes that are entirely online this semester, and I have 2 English 1010 classes that are entirely online, I've moved away from those type of discussion threads. And the ones that I have the greatest success with are more discussion threads having to do with process. And I mean, this is content, well, maybe not specific to English, but more questions asking about the writing process as students work through pre-writing and drafting and peer review and such. Each week I have a discussion thread that asks them specifically where they are in the writing process. And so one week they may share their introduction, and I may ask you know, the entire class to post their introductions in a discussion thread, their introductory paragraph or 2, and have the other students read through it and comment on it. And so not all the comments are coming from just the peer reviews, they're coming along the way. And I've had better success with those kinds of discussion threads because they seem more authentic, especially in a composition class, or they make more sense.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I guess we all really like authentic assessment here. I don't ever want to get away from writing assignments, but trying to make them authentic is really useful and gets a lot of interest from students. Anybody else want to share? I think, Judy, you have already shared how they contribute. Jason, not the course we're going to talk about today, but your contemporary issues course. You're using the discussion forums there to have students present research, right?
Yes. Yeah. So each week in that course, students are to read 2 current research articles in a similar field, in a similar area of our field. and then they're to coalesce those, to integrate those, and to give a short presentation. And so there, the discussion forums are just used as a place to post their short presentations, and then they get to watch each other's presentations and make comments on the things that they're learning and gaining from those.
Right. And so what a great way for students to learn about the range of contemporary issues in his field. The students are choosing their own areas of interest and then going out and looking at the research and presenting on them, in addition to the resources that Jason's giving them. So that, I mean, that's like social learning at its finest, I think, at its most academic. So to me, the finest.
Jason, I'm interested in how you have the students show their presentations in the discussion forum. Do you have them record a narrated PowerPoint and then post that to the discussion forum, or?
I didn't require any specific technology to use. I just said, go find something that works for you. And most of them did try to do like a voiceover with a PowerPoint. A few of them tried some other types of software that actually worked better, where they were able to do some type of screen capture while talking, so they could get their notes up and a picture of themselves. So I had a wide variety.
Great.
I know, doesn't it sound like fun? And I'll tell you a secret. Jason told me that it was like a fabulous way for him to keep up on some of the new research in his field too. Right, Judy? I know, I think that's great. Okay, so now I really, I want to talk about the what kinds of discussion forum activities work best. And I want to expose you to a range of things that people do, like what Jason just described and what Sean just described. And then we're going to look deeply at one course with a very bizarre discussion forum format, right, Jason? So that you can really see what it's like to think out of the box. So let me tell you the story of Jason and I. Jason's department decided they wanted to put a certificate online. Aging, what's it called?
It's a gerontology certificate.
Right. And so, and it's a four course certificate. And each person who designed a course had a different set of worries. And Jason's was that he typically teaches his courses face-to-face, where students sit in small groups and discuss the reading. And then he kind of wanders the room and maybe interjects, but not very much while they're talking. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. This is the picture I had.
It's great to hear you describe it, Deb.
Okay. And then he kind of pulls it all together. He might even interrupt that because he's hearing something really fascinating. But then he kind of pulls it all together at the end and discusses what he's seeing and what he's hearing. And not just by himself, but he asks questions, and so it becomes a whole group discussion. And he was like, Deb, we can't do that online. That is going to be lost. And I said, well, I think you're right. But look at what you can do with discussion forums and social learning. And he's like, no. I really like what I do. I really want to try to find a way to do this. And so I said, well, we could do this. We could do that. We'll show you in a second what we did. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, no, I don't think this is going to work. But before I get too far, I just picked one of his weekly forums at random, and I want to show you what they look like. And this is where it's so weird. Okay, so let me scroll through. We've redacted the names, any identifying information. This is just 1 week. Look at this. I just wanted you to see what's going on in there. There's Jason. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And it's like this every week in his course. See, look at this. I mean, I rarely see a course where the discussion forums look like this.
How many of these posts are Jason's?
Like 4.
Yeah, about four.
Maybe. Okay.
So Jason, when do you choose to jump in?
I don't have a formula. What I tried to do was, again, I waited until I had quite a few initial posts. And then if a particular student posted something that was particularly interesting to me, or that said something in a really distinct way, then I would sometimes make a comment there. Or if they ask a question of some kind that I hope to draw a little bit more out of the student or to help get others involved in the discussion about that, I might post a little bit of something. This course, many students shared a lot of very personal experiences with grief and with loved ones approaching death or dying. And some of the responses I made were more personal based, just to say, I'm touched by this or something like that. If they shared really personal things that I thought it may not be as appropriate to discuss it in the public forums, then I would send students a personal note. And if I was concerned about a student's mental health, how they were handling things, which I did have a few posts that were concerning to me, then I would definitely contact them individually to make sure that they were truly doing okay. And I referred a fair number of students over to the Booth Wellness Center. Whether they took me up on it, some of the students, they were just fine. They weren't in any particular need. They were just remembering past things, but stating them in a way that made me feel like I wanted them to have a referral. Anyway, so those students I would contact individually. So again, not a formulaic way that I approached it, but more of a hoping to encourage continued discussion and deepen the discussion.
So I have a question about contacting students. Of course, you can send an email on Canvas and that gets to them directly. If you go to the discussion in SpeedGrader and post a comment in that way, do any of you know how the students, students get notified if that comment has been posted? Does that depend on their notification settings that they've set up individually?
It depends on their settings.
So some students may not see it if you post it in the SpeedGrader.
And some students have learned to ignore what is coming from Canvas because they get so much from Canvas. So
the only reliable way to contact a student is not in SpeedGrader, but in an email.
Right, or call. But my struggling students, I actually sent my first go-to is the Canvas, and I like to use actually the gradebook has a feature where you can message all students that are under the score of 60, and you can say hello, and they don't. You can make sure that you can set it up so it's like a BCC where they can't see who the other people are. And if that doesn't work, then I send an email from my email. And if that doesn't work, I call them. And if that doesn't work, I text them. I don't know if you want to go that far, but that's how far you can go. And I can see why Jason, if he's got students that are, he's really worried about might go that far.
Dave, one of the things I do the first week of class is encourage students to set their notification settings so that they do get notified whenever I make comments on assignments in SpeedGrader.
Yeah, I do that as well. That's a really good idea, Terry. So let me go back to the story about Jason, and then I'll just let him talk because he has so much to tell you about what he did. So we finished, when we finished building this, this is what the course looked like on the modules page. Jason, what he does is he puts quotes up, a choice of quotes, and then students write in a reading journal about them first, and then they post in the discussion forum, and he can tell you how a little bit better than I just did, how that works. He has them self-grade both of those, the reading journal entries and the discussion posts, and then he spot checks their grading. But this is what it looked like when we built it, trying to do what Jason wanted to do. And I was, like I said, I was so skeptical. I'm like, this is so clunky. They're never going to figure this out. I don't think this is going to work. But, you know, Jason's a smart guy and he really cares. And I want to try to win him over that this, you know, we can have good social learning online. Look at this, we're only in module 6 and the students have to find that. So, I guess there are only 6 modules in the course. So I kind of held my breath and we piloted it, and I was completely wrong. The students had no trouble figuring it out. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Jason now, but open up your chat if you haven't. And while he's talking in the beginning, I'm going to populate the chat with the feedback we got from this course. When we ask students, we collect weekly feedback when we're piloting a course. And in the categories of which of these modules activities were most effective and how could the modules activities be more effective, I'm going to post the comments of the students wrote to us while he's talking. Sorry, Jason, I didn't warn you about that ahead of time.
Well, can I ask one quick question before you go into that?
Sure.
Part of my problem as an instructor is I like face-to-face because I can see their faces, but the pictures on Canvas are like these big.
I know.
Is there any way to make those so I could actually see what they look like? I mean, I like to look at the person while I'm talking to them so I can kind of see what they do. And that's a real problem for me is I'm getting old. My eyesight's not that good. A 1-by-1 picture is not big enough for me to see.
Where do those pictures actually originate? Is that from when they register in Banner? Is that where the pictures come from?
I don't think so, because some of them have pictures
I don't know.
Their kids and their
No,
dogs.
that is. Well, that's where some of them come from, but in Canvas, students can put their own pictures in, just like instructors can.
Right.
So you could ask students to go in and put up a special picture just for Canvas.
And I've done that. I've given them stipulations where I've said, I'm a face shot only, not your horse, not you, the child, but face shot only. And
Where do they go in Canvas to do that?
They go into the settings, and it's one of the navigation tabs. It's the same tab where they turn on notifications for their phone. And
I think it says account in that upper hand.
Right now, if you look, you'll see Deborah has a number 1 at hers where you just click on where it says account. That's where they go.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just do that.
And then you just go to her picture and click on it and it says,
I think you have to go into settings.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, right there with the edit.
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
But
that will change for all their Canvas courses.
Right.
Right. Another thing you can do is have students post a picture in an introduction forum.
I think we did that for this class too.
And that's
bigger.
That's part of the requirement. My rubric for the introduction post is that they have to post a selfie.
And where do you then find phone numbers? I don't see phone numbers in that account stuff.
You have to go to Banner for those.
Oh, okay.
That's where I find them. Okay. Terry just sent me a message that we have 10 minutes left and I have other courses that I want to show, But first, I really want to hear from Jason. So Jason, I'm going to leave this up, and if you want me to click on anything here, let me know.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, Deb, I think, did say that students had no problem, but no problem navigating. I think I did for this one create a navigation instruction video where I showed them how to go through it because there were a few initial problems. So I just had to use a screen capture program and capture, walking them through how to do it. And that was useful. So to help with the discussion forums, the first thing that I did is when I went through the readings myself, I created a large list of discussion questions that were very open-ended and could be answered from a variety of standpoints, just because that, to me, helps the students engage in the discussion better. And I also thought, though, that students may not want some of the canned prompts that I provided. They might find something else from the reading very interesting or very applicable to their own lives. And so I always left that open on the discussion forums. I'm getting a low battery signal on my computer. Hold on, let me get it plugged in.
Oh no, this is a bad time to lose you, Jason.
Well, we can read the posts in the chat.
Okay, there, I got my computer plugged in.
While he's doing that.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I did, is I tried to make a set of really good questions for the students so that it would really prompt deep replies. And then instead of just throwing the questions out there, I provided a couple of sample entries so that I showed students what I was looking for. And I answered the couple of example questions very candidly from my own point of view, and was quite personal in them, just so that they could see that it was okay. Again, this course on death and dying asked a lot of the students for exploring their own thoughts and their own experiences, so that they could then learn better how to apply that in helping clients that they might have. So I wanted to model that very open, being very open. And I think that was useful. So the next thing I did is that I wanted the students to be able to explore personally before they posted publicly. And so I asked them to keep a reading journal. And that was something that took us a while on Canvas to figure out how to do well. And so we finally figured out with Deb said that I was smart, but I think she was the genius behind figuring out how to do the actual reading journal in Canvas. So that I could read it and it was applicable to only one student, and they were the only ones. We had to open up an individual thread for each student, and so that they could keep an ongoing journal and not let other students have access to that thread. But I could then access it as the instructor, so that I could go in and spot check that, see what students were thinking and doing, and then I could go to the public discussion forums. And so students were able to privately explore in the reading journal their thoughts, and then they would take one or two of those ideas that they'd been working on, and I gave them instructions that in the reading journal, they could just free write. They didn't have to worry at all about punctuation or spelling or anything like that. They could say whatever they wanted, but then they needed to take part of that reading journal and then tailor it, edit it so that when they publicly posted it, it read well. If they were exploring something that was really difficult, some difficult feelings, they may not want to post all of those. Maybe they're angry about something. Maybe they want to blame something or blame a group of people or something that might be considered biased in some way. So again, they would need to edit their personal responses in order to post it in a good way on the public forum. So then as I mentioned already, I did respond to some on the public discussion forum, and I responded to some privately as well. And I thought that helped the discussion move along and become deeper over time. And I think that also I just give kudos to the students for being quite willing. I think that once they realized that it was a safe place to post, that they started to open up more. I did have two posts that came out on the public discussion forums that were not very appropriate. In one, a student showed significant bias and attacked a particular religious group. And I sent the student a private email and said why I thought it was inappropriate. And the student felt like they hadn't even realized that they were speaking in such a way. The student was very apologetic and went back and edited the post. And I was glad. I think the student even apologized publicly in the discussion forums. And I think that even though the initial post had some problems that could have hampered the discussion if I hadn't called the student on it, I thought the student handled it marvelously, and that then helped future discussions to keep being kind and done in a deep way. So those are some of the things that I did. Any questions about that?
Okay. Well, I know Jason would be happy to answer questions if you think of them later, because he's wonderful that way. I think of questions for him often. Let me do a quick run through, because we've only got a few minutes, of some other courses that we've seen that have really great discussion prompts. Dr. Lovell just showed up, and his was the next one I was going to show. What I really like about this is he put all of his content on the discussion page, so students have it right there. And then he chose a controversial topic in his field, and he gave guidance for how students should respond. Jason did that as well. Jason actually explained the rubric in great detail, but Dr. Lovell gives them a choice of different ways they can respond. And I think students really need that guidance. Is there anything you want to add to this, Dr. Lovell, to what I just said about your forums?
I'm trying to think of what to add. Sorry, I missed most of the presentation.
I know, I know.
Some of it was already discussed. No, I think, giving more options so they can kind of direct their own learning a little bit is kind of crucial. And so that's why I gave a few different prompts of different ideas of what they might want to pursue, whether that's going to be to engage in a back and forth conversation, to disagree or agree, or expand on their own personal experiences, and or to make suggestions on how to make it better or further that conversation. So as long as it's within the realm of that topic, I try to allow them to engage in whatever way they feel comfortable doing it.
Thanks. Josh Pedersen has an interesting format that I haven't really seen before. He asked students to design a chair for a persona in a small group, and then upload a picture of it. And the groups then share the results of their projects. Never really seen a discussion board used quite that way. Melinda Whipple gives students a choice of topics of age groups to discuss the same questions. And then she tells the students to include a question in their post. And so the students reply to the questions that other students actually posed, rather than Melinda trying to anticipate every question there might be for every post. She also asks students in this one to explain an injury or an illness that affects the acid-base balance of the body. So they all pick different ones. This is a jigsaw, and the previous one is too, where students bring in different pieces of content, and then she guides them through the discussion process. Olga Pilkington has her students break up into small groups and run the discussion each week. They send her the prompts and she puts them in. Linda Wright has her students go out and find a food tracking tool on the web, all different ones, use it and share the experience. And then in the replies, the students ask each other, decide if their tool they found was the best or a different one that they read about sounds better, and then justify their choice. She has another one, interesting one, that's a jigsaw. She breaks up her textbook. Wait, this one. She breaks up her textbooks so that each small group of students reads a different chapter and does a presentation. And then they actually come up with 5 questions for the exam. So the students come up with the exam questions based on their presentations. And finally, I wanted to show you, if you're not familiar with Canvas Commons, that we actually put a bunch of templates in there for you to use from our office. And if you've never seen how to do this, you just click on Commons and you go to the filters section and you choose undergraduate, graduate, and Dixie State University. You do that here. And you'll see all kinds of stuff that people in our community have posted. But we have all these discussion templates that you can see. And if you really want to have fun, you can unclick Dixie State University and just see discussions from all over the world, discussion templates. And you might get some really cool ideas. I have from looking at what other people do. So we actually did not get to the managing discussions, but fortunately, Dr. Salisbury brought it up in the beginning and everything that I had planned to say was covered. So I think we have to end it, right, Terry?
Yes, we've
I
had
feel like we could go another hour.
But I think Dr. Deb and Dr. Jason are probably both willing to answer questions and share. Thank you for sharing. I hadn't seen the discussion templates in the Commons area, and it was great to see.
Well, we just put them in 2 days ago for this presentation.
Ah, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those. Thanks to our facilitators, Dr. Deb Chittur and Dr. Jason Wild, and thanks to all of you for joining us for our discussion about discussions. I know I have some great takeaways to help me improve my online discussions, and I hope that you have some good takeaways as well. Next month's workshop will be November 11th at 1 p.m. Design Plus tools to format and style your online Canvas course. That'll be with Ethan DeCuster, who used to be one of our learning designers at DSU Online. He now is an instructional tools developer for City Lab. So we'll look forward to that discussion. But thank you again, Deb and Jason, and for all of you for joining us.
I just want to say, David, I'm going to email you an answer to your question from my experience.
Thanks.
Time to talk about
Thanks,
it.
Deb and Jason.
And feel free to reach out to them.
Yeah, I don't know about Jason, but I love to talk about this stuff. I'm a nerd for it. So thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.